I'm Quinn Lemley with Secrets of the Stage. This is the place where we pull back the curtains and we dive into the creative process. And today, I am so excited because I have the legendary Ernie Anastos.
Exactly. It's so good to see you.
It's so good
Quinn.
to see you. I can't believe
you talk
you're
about a
here.
legend. What about you? You know, I have followed you, and you've done such great work. I mean, really, on Broadway. I mean, your CDs, you're a performer. I mean, congratulations to you.
Thank
Really,
you.
I mean, you really do a great job.
Well, so do you.
Thank you.
I mean, all the things that you're a legend.
Oh, well, you know, it's nice to hear that, but I don't think of it that way. Honestly, I have to tell you something, Quinn. When I was a kid, at the age of about 7 years old, I grew up in a small town in New Hampshire. I would sit underneath the kitchen table with a radio, and I would turn up the radio. When the announcer would talk, I would turn it down and I would talk, and then the music would come up and I'd turn it up. And I wanted to be on the air from the time I was 7 years old. Absolutely.
I came out of the womb singing, so I know what it's like. You know, like when people say they don't know what they want to do, I can't imagine what that's like.
It's a gift when you have that.
It is.
Because many times, you know, young people have a hard time trying to find out, where do I go? What do I do? And if you're fortunate enough, but I believe in encouraging people at a very early age.
You do your children's programs.
Yes, I love working with a lot of young people.
Positivity and
you know,
that's so important these days.
You know what, Quinn? When you think about it, you learn from your own experience. Because I had that break. When I was 7 years old, I built a little radio station in the basement. And then at 16, I went to the local radio station. A guy named Dick Corbin, you never forget your people.
Right.
Dick Corbin said to me, Ernie, he said, I want you to read for me. And I went in the studio and I read the news, I read some commercials. He said, I'm going to give you a show on Saturday mornings. Now, that was my start. And because someone...
At 16.
16 years old, and I've been on the air ever since.
I'm from Columbus, Indiana.
Oh, yeah.
And one of my friends was Mark Weber, and he was much older than I was, but we were doing plays together. And he was the local disc jockey. And so I'd hang out and I'd listen to the news, and it was so fun. And I'd get to sing on the air. It was really fun.
See, now that was an early experience for you as well. And doesn't that set the tone for your career?
Yeah, it does, because you get to experience it and have mentors.
Do you still feel, now answer this honestly, do you still feel that you're that young girl back there experiencing it with everything that you're doing now?
I do. And then when I get an opportunity, I hop up and down. I get so excited. I can't contain myself.
I love it.
I was just producing Queen up in Albany, the Ultimate Queen celebration, and the guys did. It was so exciting because they were, the audience was on their feet, and they were so. It was so exciting, and when everything is right and all the elements come together, I get goosebumps.
You know what, Quinn? You know what we're talking about right now?
What?
And people who are watching and listening to us, we are talking about passion and enthusiasm.
Yes, positivity, like you do.
But if you have that, if you believe in it, if you practice it, it changes your whole world.
30 Emmys?
Yeah, I've
somewhat
collected
like
a few.
that?
Yeah.
What does that feel like to get an Emmy?
It feels great, but I've always felt in my own mind that I wasn't anything special in terms of, you know, you should look at me and, you know, you should honor my work and so forth. I never thought of it that way. I've always felt like this is a gift from the Lord, and I'm giving that gift back. And it's my way of saying thank you and sharing and honoring our Creator. And to me, that's the most important thing. The awards are great, but I've never, you know, sat back and said, this is who I am. I don't let those things define who I am.
Right.
I had a conversation with someone years ago. We were talking about, you know, television. And he said something good to me. He said, Ernie, he said, you know, he said, you're doing a great job. And I was just getting started. And he said, you're going to be doing this for the rest of your life. He said, this is your career. He said, the important thing to remember is that someday you'll be off the air. You know, you won't be doing it. And he said, what you don't want to do is have that TV define who you are. That television screen doesn't give you life. You give that screen life.
Oh, I love that. I want to know, how is it different being on the air like we are now, and being at the desk, and you also do radio. So what do you prefer?
They're both fun. See, because I started in radio, when I told you about that radio show at 16, I still have that early desire to be doing radio. I think it's great because you're very creative, you're animated.
How do you stay like on topic when it's just you and you don't have a co-host with you or somebody to riff off of?
I think what happens is because of your experience. You know, you just sort of know that you're going from one thing to the next. It's almost a pattern. You know, there's something that I always love to say. It's good to be consistent, but with the element of surprise.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You have to be, people have to know what you are about.
Right.
But you have to surprise them once in a while.
Yes.
You have to say,
well, life, we have to have little surprises.
Yeah, exactly.
I perform at a jazz club, or I used to. I haven't since.
Really?
But every year for 20 years, every other year, I would sing either at Christmas for 10 days or at New Year's for 10 days with my jazz band.
Wow.
At the Half Note in Metz in Athens.
Oh, wow.
And I just love Greece, and so you
Beautiful
are the
country.
first Greek American
anchor
ever.
Right.
How does that feel? I mean,
it feels good. You know, I never really thought about it. It's interesting because at one point in my career they wanted to change my name because
I'm so glad they didn't.
Yeah, because it was a little ethnic, and they wanted to give me another name, and I did it for a short time.
What did they want to give it?
Andrews. Ernie
no,
Andrews. Yeah. You know what's funny about it, though? I had the name Ernie Andrews when I was doing radio in Boston at WRKO. And then I was going into television, and I said to my wife, you know what? I have to go back. I've got to be who I am.
Yeah.
I said, you know, because I don't want to use the name Andrews. So they hired me at WPRI TV in Providence, Rhode Island, and I was going to do the news. And I'm sitting down with the general manager, and a great guy, Ed Pfeiffer. And he said to me, Ernie, he said, we're really happy to have you on board. I said, thank you so much, Ed. I said, I'm thrilled to be here. He said, I've been thinking about your name. And I said, whoa, this is great. He said, what do you think of Keith Andrews?
No!
Can you imagine
And so
that?
what did you say?
Oh, I started to laugh. He said, what's the matter? I said, you know what? I said, I was going to tell you that I want to use Ernie Anastos. He said, oh, I didn't mean to offend you. He said, absolutely. He said, you go with that.
That's
but I thought that
great.
was funny, you know?
Now, I heard a story that we have a mutual friend, Chuck Armstrong, with
Sure.
Wonderama.
Great guy. Oh,
Wonderama TV.
Wonderful guy.
I mean, talk
Heart
about
of soul.
Yes. So he was telling me a story that early in your career, you were, I think, in New Hampshire. I don't know where.
Could have been, yeah.
And there was a snowstorm, and you were on the air for a week continuously.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about that.
It was the blizzard of '78, and that was in Providence, Rhode Island. I was on the air, I mean, nonstop. We had to sleep at the station, couldn't leave. But we had a great time because we had the camaraderie. Everybody was on the same team. We were excited about it. It was something fresh. I loved it. I thought it was a thrill to be doing something like that. Very memorable. But these are the things that you remember in your life, and you say, you know what? I'm glad that I did that. I'm glad that I was there. There have been some serious problems, too. I covered 9/11 extensively in New York, which was painful.
I was here for that.
Very painful story. I mean, that really, you know, there was a time when we were on the air, all of us. I was at CBS 2, and we were on the air for months at a time. And we were all going through a lot of emotion. And there was one point that we were in my office. There were several anchors and reporters, and we were just talking. You know, we all started to cry.
I bet.
I mean, there was so much emotion built up.
Well, and you're also taking in the energy of the people that you're interviewing and you're reporting on.
Total. I mean, and I would go down there on a regular basis, and then to be at ground zero and to be thinking about the people that were lost. And a lot of the people, you know, as you said, we would interview, and they were family members. And there were some people that worked at the TV station as well that were lost. But I mean, you know, you've got these tough stories. And then you've got, you know, the happy stories covering, you know, the World Series in New York, parades, different events. I've done the Puerto Rican Day Parade for several years in New York.
Fun.
I did the Greek American Parade. I did the Israeli Parade.
Yes.
But I mean, you know, there are so many things. The great thing about covering the news in New York is that, you know, you become a part of the culture. You become a part of people's lives.
Well,
Very
and we're
personal.
so different. We're all so diverse. That's what I love about New York.
Yeah, the diversity. I've always said New York is the whole world in one city.
I want to show your video. I think it's so uplifting and inspiring, and it's exactly of what you're saying. If we can roll the video of Ernie in New York.
Yeah.
Now, Positively Ernie with Ernie Anastos, a New York TV legend and radio host with great positive stories and interviews.
Thanks, Ernie. You're the best.
And now, here's Ernie.
When I think about positive news, one of the reasons that I decided that I was going to do this, you know, full time, for years, 4 decades on the air, I would go on the air and I would say, good evening. And then I would tell people why it wasn't. And I said, you know, here I am filling them with negative stories. You have to report it. I mean, it is what it is. We're not going to censor news. But I would feel bad sometimes by the end of the evening that I had so much, you know, terrible stories. But I felt that, you know, when COVID broke, I had time on my contract. I decided I was going to take a little bit of a break. I did a year at Harvard Business School, came back and created something called Positively America.
Yes.
And it's a half-hour syndicated show, 200 stations around the country. We're on Pix 11 here in New York. And it's good, interesting stories, the things that make people think about. I ask questions on the street, you know, do you believe in love at first sight? What's the best thing that ever happened to you?
Yes.
And then we do interviews and talking about, you know, what is your mission in life? What is important to you? How can you make a difference in this world? Talk about family relationships, and I love all of that. And I get great feedback. You know, people say, hey, Ernie, I love listening, and my commentaries as well.
You're an author, too, a children's book author.
I've written 2 books. I wrote a book on the history of teenagers in America, and then I wrote a book for young kids, and it's Ernie and the Big News, The Adventures of a TV Reporter. Now,
so tell me a story from,
I'll
tell
you what it is. It's what I told you, that it's the story of a young reporter, that would be me in the book, who does a little radio show in his basement. And then he comes to New York and he covers the parade, he covers all the things, but there are positive stories, like a little boy was lost, he was stuck in, his mom was stuck in the car, and then they take her out of the car, and it's a happy ending. We gave away probably 20 or 25,000 copies.
Oh, okay.
And what we did was we went out,
That's fantastic.
and these kids would be listening to me, and you know what? I would tell them the story about my teacher. I said, when I was in junior high, we had a career day, and you know, they would bring people in and talk about different jobs that you could choose. And I went to my teacher, Miss Evelyn Ryan.
I'm so impressed that I remember my teachers, too.
Isn't that nice?
Yes.
Teachers are great.
I know.
I
They
honor
are
them.
great.
So I went to Miss Ryan. I said, Miss Ryan, how do you decide on what you're going to do with your life? And she said to me, I was 13. She said, Ernest. She called me Ernest. She said, Ernest, whatever you enjoy doing will be the avenue to your success. And I said, what does that mean? She said, what do you like to do in your spare time? I said, well, I got a radio station in my basement. That's it. She said, you have to do that. That's your passion.
Oh, my goodness.
So when I go out to talk to these young kids, I would tell them the story, and then I'd say, okay, tell me what you do in your spare time. What do you like to do? And these kids would be talking about, you know, goldfish or something, and I'd say, maybe you have a career in oceanography. Maybe you can. In other words, look for a career that's related to what you naturally like. I was in Boston working at WRKO Radio, and I was doing the morning news. And the news director came to me one day and he said, listen, he said, we're having a lunch today for Alfred Hitchcock.
Oh, my goodness.
And I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, there aren't that many people there. He said, can you come? I said, sure. So I go to a luncheon, and there must have been 10 people sitting at this table. And I'm sitting here, and Hitchcock is like right there.
What was that like? What was his energy like?
I looked at this man. First of all, he was, you know, huge, and he had such a bouncing voice.
Right.
And I said to him, Mr. Hitchcock, I said, it's a pleasure to meet you. He said, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And I said, I have to ask you a question, sir. He said, what is it? I said, how do you decide? I said, when I watch Alfred Hitchcock Presents or your movies, you always have these amazing plots. And I try to figure out how you decide on what you're going to do and how they end. And he said to me, these ideas come to me at the most inopportune time.
I'm sure.
And I said, really? Tell me about that. He said, many times, he said, I could be just walking somewhere or sitting at a dinner table and I have an idea. And I said, so what do? I write it down on a piece of paper. And I said, wow, that's great. Then there was a pause. And he reached into his pocket. I'll never forget this. Reached into his pocket. And he had a bunch of crumbled up pieces of paper, slammed it on the table, and he said, the future.
That is fantastic.
I said, man, what's in there? The birds? What was it?
The birds.
I mean, what is in there? You know, and I
crazy.
said, what a creative mind. But you know, he just shared something with me that, you know, that stayed with me. That creative process happens all the time.
It does. You know, I find that I get ideas, especially like just when I'm doing scales or I'm exercising or walking. That just being in nature, that kind of thing. It's just like divine intervention. You get an idea, and but it's acting on it.
Yes, yeah.
You've acted on everything, and you've been on every major station.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. You know, it's interesting because every time I would make a move, someone was leaving. I was at Channel 7 Eyewitness News, my first station, loved it. And I was doing great, and I had a wonderful time. I was there for like 11, 12 years.
Wow.
And Jim Jensen, who was a legendary figure in New York on CBS, a wonderful guy, he was retiring after 30 years. And they came to me and they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And I did that. and enjoyed it immensely. And then John Rowland, who was another legendary figure at Fox 5, he was leaving, and the Murdochs came to me and said, you know, we need you. And I made the move, but I've enjoyed it. It was a challenge to feel that I'm working with new people, same audience, but still a new audience. And so it became an interesting challenge for me to say, okay, what can I do here? And the ratings would go up, so that made me really feel good.
Did you feel that you were pivoting, or is every culture different with each station? Or
no, you know what? I have to tell you, there is a really respectful feeling among the people who are on the air at all the stations. You know, people respect each other's talent. And I think that's important. I mean, it's not competitive. I've been friends with all the anchors at different stations, and if we see each other someplace or if we socialize, you know, it's a wonderful feeling, and it's saying, I respect your talent. You know, you have a gift, you're doing the best you can with it, I respect it. And it's only a short ride, let's face it. I mean, life is to be lived. I
know. We were talking about that a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
you know,
it is. I mean, you have to make sure that you enjoy every day. I went to a private concert. It was PBS was doing something with John Mellencamp.
My dad caters for him.
Oh, really?
He's in Bloomington, Indiana.
Really?
Yes.
Well, Mellencamp, as you know, is a very talented guy.
Yeah.
And he was doing a little private concert. It was taped for PBS. And I was sitting there in this audience, and he was talking about his grandmother. And he said, you know, when my grandmother was on her deathbed, he said, I was sitting there and she was looking at me and she said, listen, I want you to do good with your life and enjoy every day because life is short, even when it's long.
Yeah.
And he used it in one of his songs, that line, life is short, even when it's long.
Wow.
And it's true. I mean, I'm excited about life. I don't think about, you know, dying, but if I do think about dying, and I'm sharing some of my philosophy, I know that there's something there.
Oh, I know. My mom passed away a couple of weeks ago.
And I'm so sorry about that.
But I knew that I had this time with her. She was my best friend. She would go on the road with me. She did digs in Greece, and we'd meet in Athens, and then we'd go to Corinth, or we'd go to islands for 6 weeks at a time.
Yeah.
And she was sort of like my partner in shaping me, and I knew that she had cancer at the last minute, and I think she had always told me that she lived life to the fullest. And so even though I'm grieving her, I want to be like her, you know, because she always
celebrating her life.
Yes.
There was a survey that I saw not too long ago, and they asked a lot of young people, teenagers, who's your hero? Who's your hero?
My mom.
You know, when you think about history, you know, back in the 30s and the 40s, you know, when you asked young people, it was a sports celebrity. It was a movie star. People along those lines. But parents, for young people today, they're heroes.
Yeah.
Parents, they have tremendous influence on their kids. And now more than ever, we have to make sure we exercise that, because, you know, there are a lot of influences out there, things that, you know, that are frightening.
I just can't believe, I mean, it seems like, I feel like when I was younger, we had a lot more freedom in the imagination, because now everything's on the screen and everything.
Yeah.
But kids today have all this privilege of things that we didn't have, and the world is so much bigger for them.
No, imagination is very important, because you know,
and your radio in your basement.
You know, I've done so many interviews. You know that one time I was sitting on the set and we were waiting for like Monday Night Football or something, trying to figure out how many newscasts, how many broadcasts we've actually anchored.
Wow.
Over my career, you know that I've anchored over 25,000 broadcasts.
Do you always know what to ask or what to say, or do you have pre-planned thoughts?
You know, you have to have preparation, okay? You have to have an idea as to where you're going. You have to know who the person is, and you want to direct that conversation. But I like to also make it natural.
Me too.
And I listen, like I'm listening to you. You say something, I'll pick up on it.
Right. Yeah. Now you are shooting a new series, or you're a bunch of episodes
the
this summer.
show Positively America,
yes,
because we're on all these stations. Now we're creating a new batch of programs, 26 new shows. So I'm in the process of producing the show, and I love to have my hands on.
I do too.
You know, you like that,
I love it.
You put the stories together, you produce it, you line it all up. So I've been doing that, and plus hosting it. So I love doing that. And then on WABC Radio, I love doing my daily features.
When can they? Where can they?
They're on every day.
At what time?
They're on at 9:45 in the morning,
Okay.
3:30 in the afternoon, and then other different time periods, and also on the weekends. So when people tune in, and you can go online, and it's Positively Ernie on WABCRadio.com.
Okay.
But I love doing these, and I just find a whole bunch of stories. I talk about, you know, IQ tests. How important are they? I'll talk about, you know, marriage. You know, how has it changed?
How has marriage changed? What do people say?
You know, you talk about diversity, and you know, people feel that, you know, now they're able to say and be who they are and what they want.
It's beautiful,
and I applaud that. So it's still one basic thing. It's called love.
Yeah.
No matter what. I mean, if you're married to somebody, if you're partnering with somebody, the foundation for that should be LOVE, love. To me, love is the most powerful force in the world. It changes everything.
Yes.
And if you have that love, and if you send it out there, it's going to come back to you.
Aphrodite is my favorite.
Aphrodite. Oh,
my mom was always like Aphrodite and Persephone.
So, yeah, you have a little Greek connection there.
I
Did
have
you
a
learn
lot
any
of
of the language? Have you learned any Greek?
Well, I mean, I sang, you know, Never on a Sunday, a little bit in Greek, but
Nana Mouskouri?
yes.
Did you ever meet her?
No.
Yeah, I met her once. Great.
What is she like?
Very, very special person. You know what I mean? You know, her heart and soul, you know, was always there, and she loved Greece, but she loved what she did. And not too many years later, I bumped into Harry Belafonte.
Oh my goodness.
And they had recorded an album together. And Harry spent some time in Greece, and he loved Greece as well. He picked up a little Greek, you know.
I mean, I Efkaristo, Parakalo.
Yeah.
Oh, and then my big one is Puine.
Puine, where is it?
Right? Where is it?
You know, there are a lot of, you know, Greek philosophers. And there's one that I remember reading about years ago, and it stuck with me. A Greek philosopher, he was an unknown, and he said, I have a wish to die young, but as late in life as possible.
Oh, I love that. That's good.
So what is that? Quinn, youthful heart,
yes.
youthful spirit.
Yes.
You interview people who are centenarians, people who have lived to 100 years old, common denominators. They have an enthusiasm for life. They're always looking to learn something new, something different.
Yeah.
They have a sense of humor. They like to laugh.
Right.
So I always ask people, you know, a couple of questions when I'm doing my interviews. I'm going to ask you the question.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
This is a fun question.
Okay.
If you could give a newborn baby some advice that they could put somewhere and then read it later on in life to be able to share and say, that was interesting. What advice would you give to a newborn baby to remember someday in their lifetime?
To say yes when it's a good allurement of yes, that then you blossom and learn.
Right.
Because I think earlier in my life, I let other people, or feeling like I wasn't good enough, or until I just figured out I didn't have anything else to lose, you know, to show up. And, you know, the other thing is to show up.
Show up, to be there.
To be there.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we're not totally present, and just show up.
There was another question that I've asked on the street when I do my question, and that is, what do you wish you knew when you were young that you learned later on in life? When I started asking myself that question, I said, I wish that I wasn't so trusting in my lifetime. So
really? Do you
naive.
think that
Sometimes,
I feel that way too. I mean, I'm that way.
Yeah. You know, if you have a good heart and you're trying to do something, there are people who will take advantage of that. As a father and as a grandfather, I believe in imparting some of this to the children and saying, look, I want you to be smart. I want you to be wise and understand what life is about. But at the same time, I want you to be gentle.
Yes.
Gentle like a lamb.
I like that.
Watch and do what you can, but be careful of being taken advantage of. Covering the news for all these decades on the air, I've always been worried about people who have been abused and taken advantage of. Children, elderly, animals. Certainly, you know, there's a wide subject matter. But to me, I've always been hurt to see people who have been taken advantage of. And that's painful.
You've had this incredible career, and you continue to surprise us, and you're authentic, and relevant. How do you do that?
It comes from what we were talking about early on, and that is to always be thinking about who you are and what talent or gift you've been given and how you can use it. And in order to really use it well, you have to be able to go with the times. You can't live in the past.
Have you seen other anchors or other talent that just can't move with the times?
Well, you know, I mean, we'd have to go back because, you know, now, you know, a lot of the younger people who are on have evolved. Some of the older people years ago, and the only reason that they did it is because they were told to do it. They were told that you must sit in that chair. And, you know, there was a book written for a lot of the anchors at different networks.
Oh.
And I remember reading it a long time ago. It was
It's a public book?
No,
or?
it was an in-house book. And they were talking about when you're on the air, you don't show any emotion in your voice, in your facial expressions, and in your body language.
How could you do that? You're Greek.
I know. How could I do it?
It's not possible.
But in the old days, you know, when they first started reporting the news with wonderful people like Douglas Edwards and so forth, I mean, they were more straightforward because that was the time. And they wanted you to be that way. And then all of a sudden it opens up. So to answer your question, it's like you have to sit and say, okay, where are things today? How can I utilize my experience, but apply it to what's happening now so you become relevant?
Is there any last word that you would like to say, Ernie? I'm just so thrilled you're here.
You know, I must say that I'm happy to be here because,
this is great.
you know, you really are so easy to talk to. And I know that you're going to be doing some appearances very soon. I'm not sure when this is going to air.
Soon.
But you're going out to the Jersey Shore,
Yes,
right?
yes, you have to come down.
Yeah,
you
you're
guys
going to be
come
out
down.
there and you're doing Rita Hayworth?
Rita Hayworth and Kate May for a week.
How does it feel for you to be doing that? I mean, what a great role that is.
I love it because it's about women's empowerment and it's about owning the choices that we make in our life.
You know, you've done her so much, you know,
Thank
honor
you.
and credit by what you do. But congratulations to you, Quinn.
Thank
Send
you.
love to everybody. Thank you. I love you.
Ernie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Quinn.
Until next time, I'm Quinn Lemley with Secrets of the Stage. We air the first Sunday on mnn.org, on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, or you can go to quinnlemley.com, sign up for my newsletter so that you know where I'm playing, and definitely find me on social media at Quinn Lemley. Until next time, Secrets of the Stage.